I was chasing, I guess, this circle, right? And my team was going, Jennifer, every time you get promoted, have you not noticed that they create a whole new circle and group for the men? Leaders. And it's like you're chasing a circle, you're never going to get in. They don't want you in there. So I had like a very direct conversation with my boss at the time and I said, "What is my future? Where am I going? Can I, like, I am running circles around the other men. How do I?" And he was just like, I'm going to be honest with you. And he was very candid. I had no issues. I loved the company. I loved my job. And he was like, this is just a company that just does not believe that next level, that female should be in that circle.
Welcome to Women and Work, the show where we take an inside look at how women are overcoming our own unique challenges as we grow our careers or build a business while nurturing relationships and family. I'm Diane Moca, founder and CEO of MomSub, the childcare app that connects you to a substitute mom. And I want you to know that work can fit your life. Each week, we meet a woman who has done that. And today I'm with Jennifer Sutton. She is the founder of two companies and a podcast. Orange Whip is a platform featuring content, tools, and community for founders. Bright Marketing is a growth agency that hones in on positioning to help builders scale. And Hello Chaos shares founder stories through a podcast that has reached 207 episodes. And here at Women in Work, where we've produced about 70 episodes so far, we know that's quite a feat. All right. Thanks for being here, Jennifer.
Well, thank you, Diana, for inviting me. And I love talking with other female founders and women, and especially working moms.
Yes, yes, we need to stick together and collaborate. And
That's
I
right.
thank you for having me on the Hello Chaos podcast. That episode
Absolutely.
will be coming out in October 2026 or sometime in the fall.
That's
And
right.
I know that you worked in advertising, media, and marketing for almost 20 years before you ventured out on your own and started Bright Marketing about 12 years ago. And
That's
so
right.
I would imagine during that time when you were in corporate, you experienced possibly the glass ceiling,
Oh, yeah.
possibly, marketplaces and workplaces where it was difficult to be a woman, even in an area like marketing and media, where there are a lot of women in certain roles, but maybe not necessarily at the top.
That's
And
right.
then you moved into this startup world, which is dominated by men.
Yeah.
So I always start out by asking what you think has been the biggest challenge in your
Mm.
career, specifically because you are a woman.
Wow, that's a great question. Well, one, when I ventured and did my startup in 2013, and it was because I not just hit the glass ceiling came down on me. Of I was in a larger agency, and like I said, in the agency world and the industry, there are a lot of females, but predominantly all the agency owners and especially the big companies are run, the leadership teams are all men. They're run by, they're owned by men. And that's, you just kind of, it's that Mad Men era. I mean, it's never, especially some of the older agencies that have been around for a long time still feel that way. Uh, but yeah, I was, you know, first female manager, first female director, first female executive director, and I was chasing, I guess, this circle, right? And my team was going, Jennifer, every time you get promoted, have you not noticed that they create a whole new circle and group for the men? Leaders. And it's like you're chasing a circle, you're never going to get in. They don't want you in there. So I had like a very direct conversation with my boss at the time and I said, "What is my future? Where am I going? Can I, like, I am running circles around the other men. How do I?" And he was just like, I'm going to be honest with you. And he was very candid. I had no issues. I loved the company. I loved my job. And he was like, this is just a company that just does not believe that next level, that female should be in that circle. It means something. That's it's just, this is a privately held, very, I would say, Southern traditional, uh, you know, evangelical mindset of there's just certain things that women should not be in charge of. Um, and that was kind of like, whoa. So no matter what I do here, this is like I'm 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 title stuck. There's no growth for it. And it's, you just say when you kind of get that reality, all of a sudden your mindset starts opening, looking for and opportunities were coming to me throughout like just weeks, days, weeks, months later. And then I started the company Bright later that year. And it's been wonderful, very much challenging. And I think, to answer your question of what's been the biggest challenge as a woman, one, when I did start it, and it was with the mindset of, I want to create something that's bigger than me. I don't want to just put my name on because that's kind of the tradition of, Sutton Strategies or Sutton Marketing. Everyone uses their last name for their business, and I was like, I don't want that. I want it to be, bigger. I'm building a brand. I want to create a business for scale. Um, and not until I bought a building a year and a half later, um, I had people coming out of the like, oh, so like you're really serious about this business. I just thought you were just another, you know, mom that just wanted to get some gigs. And you create a business to find jobs. And you're like you're actually doing something that's bigger. But it took a year, like, to wake up people who had known me. These were executives that I worked with at large companies, sat in their boardrooms, and that moment. And it didn't even dawn on me of like, oh, this is why they're not giving me their business. It was that. I kind of had framed it of, I got to build it. They can't go to their board and go, we can't go to a startup. But it's interesting. Other men that started there, and like I said, I came from agency, like 2 decades of working in really, some large agencies, working on some of the, top brands in the country, if not the, global brands. But I was seeing, agencies popping up and being started by an accountant. No agency experience whatsoever, just saw the opportunity. And those same kind of male executives were, oh, you're doing that? Okay. You know, I'll bring my business to you. And I'm just, that's where it was like, we are viewed very differently. It is. And we, through Orange Whip that we study entrepreneurial ecosystems across the country, and we have created kind of and map the ecosystem across South Carolina, because that's where we are, um, to study the gender biases that exist in, um, uh, not just in startups, but in scale ups. There is such a, just worlds apart. We're on different spectrums of how we're treated, how we're funded. Um, it is, you look at like the funding scale, right? You look at all the venture capitalists, the PE money, VC money, all of that through in the United States. Um, what is it? Like 90% goes to 4 states. Do you know what states they are? Could you guess?
California,
California's one.
New York,
New York's another.
Texas,
Texas is the third.
maybe Illinois, where I'm based, Chicago. No.
No. It's New York, New Jersey, Connecticut,
Oh,
California, and then Texas. That's 90 some percent. Actually, if you even add on Texas, it might be like 95%. That means all other cities, all other states are fighting for that 5 or 10%, right? So South Carolina is like, nothing. But out
Chicago's
of
the
all,
third largest city in the country.
I know.
And the
And they're
tech
probably,
ecosystem here, it, does have a bit I wouldn't even call it a chip on their shoulder, but we recognize that, we're the
Yeah.
forgotten stepchild,
And you look at it's like, Chicago might be putting in like 3%, because they're probably at where everything, Indianapolis, like, you look at like San Diego, well, that's California, so that gets covered. But it's amazing when you look at like, okay, we're all competing. And then when you look at the framework by gender of, and minorities. Women, we were at the point we got at the highest level that we had ever climbed at the end of, was it 2023, 2024? We were at like 3.7%. End of 2025, because of kind of the climate that we're in today, we're right at 2% of funding.
because the money's all going to AI companies and women may be starting companies that are solving problems other than, AI in the world, like childcare,
Yeah.
like
But
women's health, like,
right.
maternity
And
leave.
it's and this is a product. We see like really good CPG brands that are coming out. We see really good like outdoor, utilitarian brands. It's just across all spectrum of all industries. And there's a lot of like med tech, fintech, female founders. There's a lot of like life science, bioscience. It doesn't matter the category. And we've always fought that. Even at like the 3.7%, we were at the highest. It didn't matter what industry and it's because women go in and we are no matter what room, we're asked a different set of questions. So the other thing is, you got accelerators and incubators and pitch programs that are run by men. And they're teaching everybody in the room, this is how you pitch. This is what you need to prepare for. But it's designed with them in mind, right? But the women walk in the room or, a minority walks in the room, if they're of any color, they're asked different sets of questions men are, it's almost like I've already given you the money. Now just tell me what show me my return. Like, give me the numbers. Well, women come in there, they're usually well more prepared. They know the numbers, they see the return because they aren't asking for money until they might be 5 years into the business or 10 years in the business versus a guy with a post-it note and some numbers goes in and he might be walking out of there with 5 million. A woman might be walking out of there with 25,000, but she is well more prepared. But her set of questions are, you need to prove to me like that you're even worthy of our money.
Mm.
A
Yeah,
man
they're
is
asked
our
more about, about what they've done and, why they don't have more revenue or traction,
right
whereas the men are asked where they're going,
where they're
about
going.
their vision.
It's
Like, oh, tell
always
me about your projections. And when women try to say that, they're like, well,
well, hold on. I don't
yeah,
care about that. Like
right.
let's talk about, are you worthy? Like, what have you done? Like, why should I even trust you? And then here's the other incredible stats that the women that do, so that 2 to 4% that do get funding, they show a higher ROI. We're talking about like a 30% better ROI on investment, more stable, more structured, and scalable than male founded businesses. So sometimes even more exponentially in certain categories. So the numbers, the data is there, but it's not translating into better outcomes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that you're fighting for this and tracking this. And I want to go back to that meeting that changed your life, that you
Yeah.
didn't know going into that meeting was going to change your life. Because it brought me back to a time where I was laid off from a job that I thought was going to really launch my career to a different level. And I saw some signs coming, and the organization went through a lot of different changes. It was
Right.
a media startup and, but I was sitting there and I couldn't control myself and I was crying and it was a female boss.
Yeah.
And then the other woman that was in the room handing me tissues and, and I was kind of shell shocked for a while, figuring out how to try to come back to that. And it ended up me
Yeah.
moving back home, kind of changing the trajectory of what I was doing. And then I freelanced for a while and, and then I landed actually the place where I stayed for 15
Right.
years and really thrived. But I wonder in those hours, in that time, in the
Hmm.
days and weeks ahead, was it emotional? Was it shocking? How did you react? Did was this your direct boss? Did your mind go to like, I'm gonna file something, I'm gonna write an email, I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell everybody? Or did you immediately go to, I got to get out of there, what's my next step? Did you start scheming and planning and writing down your goals right away, or did it take some time to seep in? There's other women that go through this and I want to know, what
Yeah.
the steps were that happened for you.
It wasn't really like in that moment. So that was in like early 2013. It was the start of the year. And it was more of the, like a, oh my gosh, I love this company. Like, oh, and I'm not gonna like all my hard work, no matter what I do, no matter how many more hours I put in or how much more, billables I come in, that I bring in for the company. It's not going to matter. It won't matter. So, then it becomes like I'm a processor. So it's like, okay, well, I always say that, no matter where you are in your career, if you love the company, love what you're doing, you have I call your windows and your doors closed to opportunity because you're just like I'm in a rhythm, I'm doing it. And it was when I walked out of there, and again, it wasn't like oh man, I didn't get mad. It was just like, man, there's like, there's just there's no future here. Um, and then I think it was like 2 days later, I had an old client that she had gone on to be CEO of another company, wasn't going to come back to the agency. They had and she just was like, sent me a text and she was like, hey, I was just thinking about you. I saw your last post on LinkedIn or something. And she was like, have you ever considered going out on your own? I mean, it was just like, and those moments were happening. So that was like a couple of days later. And then I would go to, because I worked with a lot of media and publishers and general managers of, TV stations and radio stations and stuff. And so I would go to it was like a week later, I'd go to lunch and someone, why are you not out on your own? And it was, but and I'm just going, is, am I just now paying attention? But it was so odd that I just started picking up on the pattern. It was, weekly, monthly, leading up to my father-in-law passed away that summer. We were up in Indiana, taking care of just being around family and taking care of the funeral details and doing that. And I had a couple of, again, past colleagues that were just like, hey, I saw your post. Sorry about your father-in-law. Are hey, can you take any side gigs? Would you ever, why have you not started your own agency and company? And so then it was just like, we're sitting up there and I, started sending a note back. I'm like, you know what? I don't even know what that looks like. I never thought about starting a business. I've never even thought about like just doing, somebody was like, well, just do a couple of gigs. Like, you don't even have to start a business. Just, you know, do some gigs. Take a couple of jobs. Um, and at the time, you have to, my kids were, I have four kids, and my two youngest at that time were like 1.5 and 3. And my oldest was what, 13? So it was like 13, 11, 3, and 1. And I was working 90 hours a week, traveling about 10 days a month. So I was missing a lot, and
Were
but
you feeling guilt about that, or were you like, this is my career and this is how
it,
it's going to be?
yeah, it was more of, everybody kind of makes those sacrifices and choices, and yeah, there is some of that mom guilt, but you think there's a payoff.
Right. You were doing it because you really wanted to get to that
And I think that was my
C-suite.
wake up call when all that happened at the beginning of the year. It was, oh my gosh, I'm sacrificing these. And it's like, yeah, they were promoting me, but it was promoting me and like making up levels and then creating new levels for the 6 men, 6, 7 men to like, you know, to keep chasing. So, yeah, I was being promoted, but it was like, it started to become when it was obvious to 10 other like your department heads and your team, and you're like, oh yeah, oh crap, like that's weird. But that's where it was like that all like, huh, you know, oh, all those sacrifices. Maybe I'm not making the right choices. Maybe I didn't prioritize the way I needed to prioritize because there's no payoff. Um, and because other women that were in the agency, they were choosing not to, when I look at like my other, when, I've gotten promoted beyond my peer, the other women in my peer group, um, they were like, ooh, I can't, I can't take that promotion. My husband won't allow it, which is just a awful, a phrasing of things, or, that role requires travel. My husband won't allow that because the husband's like, I have to be the one in our family unit. Everybody has those choices and how they create their family, structure. Um,
Well,
and
that's totally different than saying, I don't want to be away
correct,
from my children that much. I versus my husband won't allow it.
right. Or we
We're-
just don't have that. Like that is not like I have to be home every night to put the food on the table. I've got to do these things. There's no way I'd be able to leave for 3 days for a business trip. And that was a lot of the women in my period. Not now, I had several women, female clients who were COOs, CMOs, and CEOs who we were on the same like level of mindset of you create the family structure, but it's not just like it's equal. It's not a the imbalance there. So but it was that's what that was like, ugh, there's no payoff. And then, when you go through and you're like, okay, well, tell me what that looks like, and I'm texting her back like, okay, you want me to come on? What does that look like? If you want to hire me, I have no idea how that looks like. What is that structure? It was so foreign to me, because didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. Like I came from two parents who were workaholics, but they were in nonprofit and geriatric care. So there was, I came from that space. So, and then you get a couple of folks that come out and go, I just need you for 5 hours a week to help me prepare my board reports so that, you look at my data, help me prepare and tell my story to the board, help me manage board communication. Another one was like, can you help me, manage this digital media buy? And it's complex and stuff. And, it's probably going to be like maybe 10 hours a week. And I'm sitting there going, and I'm like, what am I going to get paid for that? And it was both of them combined. It was, yeah, 15 hours or something. And it was like 70% of my salary, my current salary.
You
And
gave them a price or they told you what
they
they would
told
pay?
me what they would pay.
Because they were used to paying agency rates and you were being paid as an employee.
Right. So I was like, and they are used to, these were companies that were used to consultant rates.
Hmm.
They were used to paying the McKinseys. They were, so it was I'm like, oh, and it was high level, more consulting, analytics and board, data interpretation.
And you didn't have
Uh,
a non-compete with your current employer?
well, I did, but
Whoops.
we got out of that. That
Oh, you
was the
got
only
out
thing.
or you just did it anyways?
Oh, I got out of it. Yeah.
You went to them and said, I want to take some side work, and they said, okay.
I went in and they said, no, that's not acceptable. You will leave. And by the way, you are under a non-compete. And then the HR person was like, go seek a lawyer.
Like it was a woman,
Yeah, she was. She was like, wink,
and
wink,
she
go
was
seek a
actually
lawyer.
giving you advice to help you, not to help the company.
Correct.
Nice. And
So
you
yeah.
did, and you went and talked to a lawyer?
And yeah, we got, it was out of it.
Because non-competes a lot of times in court are ruled
They were, it was
not
poorly written.
mm, yeah,
Um,
not valid, you know,
yep,
or not enforceable. And
not enforceable.
so
So
it didn't ever get to court. You just had a lawyer draft a letter and they said fine. And then you went away.
that's how I left. Yeah.
Okay.
There was some
You
of that.
hadn't started taking on side business until, so you didn't just do it on the side and not
Mm-mm.
tell anyone. You went
Nope.
to them to be upfront and
And I
they,
was also like, hey, could you come? Could I, you be a client of mine? Can I just be a consultant
right.
and help either fill my position or can I do 10 hours, 15 hours of work
And
of things? And that's when they're like, no,
no.
out. Here's
And
the door.
were these two clients current clients
No,
of the company? Were they
no.
previous clients of the company?
One was a previous, another one was a prior employee who had
Oh,
left the company like a decade
okay.
prior. Yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. There was no
Weren't
conflict.
stealing away their
Nope.
clients.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
Well, good for that HR person, you know. We
Yeah.
women, like we said at the beginning, need to stick together. And for
That's
her
right.
telling you, and you know, and giving you that empowering message. You might have done it on your own, but for her to
I
say
wouldn't have.
that,
I didn't know.
you
I mean,
wouldn't
it
have.
was,
You wouldn't have.
I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. I didn't know. I mean, that's again, it was all, I probably would have just, and that's where we sat down and said, okay, if, maybe I shouldn't, but okay, well, that now I've already departed. So let me just take the moment. I'll do these couple of gigs. And kind of work, and also these two folks were like, if I need to call the agency owner and just go, what the fuck? Like, excuse my, what the hell? Like, I'm not bringing any, like, we don't have any business with you there. It's a company that's never done business with you. And then it was a, past employee who was like, I'm not bringing this business to you. I don't need an agency. I need her brain. Um, and so they were, they're like, do I need to go fight? And I was like, no, 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 no.
Validating.
Yeah,
That must have been that. Did that, you think, give you really the courage and the confidence to say, this is the right move for me?
it did. It gave me that, and also just with kind of my HR friend that was just like, don't don't worry, just keep going. Um, Nothing's gonna stop. And it also just gave me some pause. So that was in the summer of 2013, and so it was. And then I got to officially like announce my departure, and it was taking those couple of. I said, let me not start until like September or October. I just need let me get just some mindset, just some space to like think through this, what's going to happen, and to kind of decide and honestly, what my three paths, what I was thinking of. Okay, I'll do these two gigs, pick up maybe a couple other, you know, and try to match my salary, and just work a few gigs. Or do I go work for another agency? Do I go now that I'm out, go shop myself around? Or, I've always been on the agency side. Is this an opportunity where I want to go brand side and go corporate? So that's where never was thinking I'm going to hold it, actually create an agency bit like, what is the vision for that? What's the structure of that? What's the whole identity, positioning? How am I going to be different? Like, wasn't even there yet. I was just thinking these are my three paths. And
Wow. And what was your husband's reaction? Was
he
there
was like, no,
nervousness
no.
about the family's finances or
He was
about
like,
your benefits or your
mm-mm.
lack of 401k or anything like that?
No, it was because the benefits were crappy anyway. They were okay. I mean, but it wasn't like I was. and we could be on his. So I did have, that like safety net there. But he was like, with the two, he's like, I think with the time, you can gain back some time. Um, and it was all take that and figure out those three paths. And he was like, I think you can fill the gig, but go work for somebody else. Like it's everything's figure outable. We can do this. And it was interesting. So as, I started announcing my departure, my phone was ringing off the hook. And it was like every agency in town was like, hey, can we talk to you? What's going on? Um, like my people that I'd worked with in the past, whether it was clients, current clients were calling going, what are you going to do? If you're going to set up a shingle, let me know. I might move my business over there. And I was like, hold on, wait, we don't know about that. But it was, rewarding to hear from people that I'd worked with from agencies prior to this one, copywriters, other media people that I work with, research folks, account people who were like, "Hey, I'm a solopreneur, creative director. Can you come in and help me be, I don't want to lose this account, but I will if I don't bring somebody else on the team." So that's kind of was the start of when you hear those stories, because you have to remember this is 2013. We're all coming off. I'm going to date myself, but we're coming out of the 2008 recession, right? It was like marketing was like coming back. Agency health was coming back because for 2 years between 2008 and 2010, something like 40-50% of agencies closed their doors between those 2 year periods. And any agencies that survived cut their staff by 20-30%. And guess what? A lot of those high level people who were really expensive all left. And so you had an explosion of solopreneurs out in the marketplace who had been now in their, working their creative business or their social media business or their website business or their media buying business, or their research business, all for a year, 2 years. Um, and that's when I was like, oh, well, now it's getting healthier again, but you've got people that were at that level and said, I will never go work for another agency. I like the tax advantages, I like the freedom, but I don't like just picking up anything. I like the big agency where we could compete and get those bigger brands. So that was the idea of Bright. Of I started creating a network of different people, the best and the brightest in different disciplines across the country. Most of them were in in the Southeast footprint, but they were Midwest folks that, because I'm from Indiana. They were people, California, that we had connected with. But you start building kind of that network. And I was like, okay, from a client perspective, what do they care about? They care about dot connection. They care about brand consistency, and they don't want to have to vendor manage, because that's what was happening of as even the brand side, client side, businesses were rebuilding their marketing departments. They were a lot of marketing directors getting rehired. They were going, okay, I'm going to hire a social media agency, and then I'm going to hire a I'm going to hire a trade show company. And so they were spending all their energy vendor managing and not thinking big picture on strategy. And so we could come in and go, look, we're pricing ourselves as like a high, a very value based company to compete. But I built all the infrastructure of the operations so that we all these people are coming. You're not getting 6 invoices, but I can design a team around your needs.
Wow, a full service agency with you in the center
Yeah.
And knowing you had, like you said, all these bright people around you that you had connected with, and they didn't need to know unless they had to interact with that
Right.
person, but they didn't need to know all the particulars. It's like
Right.
just tell me, where to send the money, how much, and
Right.
then you figure out
We figured out
all
the
the,
scopes. We do the back end.
how great. So
And
you so
even from
you
the
got to the point of really offering the kind of services the agency you came from
yeah, but just in a
was
more nimble, more modern
within a couple years,
within. So I launched Bright at the end of 2013.
within a year.
Yeah,
Wow.
within that, yeah, just a few
And
months,
you've
and
been
then
doing that ever since.
ever since. And we've refined our model. The other thing it was like when I first started out, I'm like, ugh, I never want employees. I don't want to deal with performance reviews. I don't want to deal with that because I had like 50, 60 people that were like, I don't want to deal with that. But as you start and scaling, you realize, oh no, 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 no. This is I need to have more control. And what also lessons learned of you know, it wasn't necessarily control. I needed to build better systems and training and onboarding and giving people more orientation of the bright methods. So we've done, that was lessons learned of new level, new devil, right? But we've realized that we've got to survive in now the agency, industry, which is being highly disrupted by AI. Um, and we've embraced it. We feel like AI is fantastic for workflows, for nimbleness, for speed. So it fits our positioning and our competitive advantage, but we combine it with people who have 20 years experience in their fields, which is fantastic. So you have that human component of experience input in, experience review out, but we're just able to do it with an acceleration. So we've kind of evolved the Bright to be we're a mix of W-2s, we're a mix of 1099s, strategic partnerships. Um, and really we say, we're not we've always said we're an unagency. We're an untraditional. We're agency. We're different. We now say we're an acceleration company is that we are a growth team that is designed specifically for scaling small and mid-market businesses. That again, it's the same positioning of we're design a team around your needs, but it's not necessarily a team. We're designing action plans based on how you need to grow and accelerate and prioritize those needs based on your budget and based on what are the priority to achieve your goals. And sometimes that might be we need to dial up SEO. Oop, nope, nope, we need to shift that money. Stop that. We need to move that money over. You got an operation problem, or you have a workplace culture problem, or you have no system whatsoever that goes from advertising into like figuring out visibility of closing a sale. So how do we build that infrastructure in? And we can pivot
Mhm.
within our team.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. So I want to go back to that time when you
Yeah.
realized this is going to work. All these people are contacting me. I'm going to have the clients. I'm going to, you were probably getting excited to do this. And at the time, before you left your agency and this full-time career that you had where you worked so many hours, and you had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, how
Mm-hmm.
were you dealing then with childcare? We're using traditional, daycare. And
Mm,
if you had to travel, your spouse picked up the
yeah.
slack. And then when you realized you were going to be doing, gig work and building up clients and possibly working from home, how did your childcare change or did it? Did you just say, no, I'm just going to keep it like it is? Or, well, since I'm only working 20 hours a week, maybe I'll pull the kids out of daycare and I'll just have someone come help me a few hours a
Mm,
day, Or did you
yeah.
try to manage on your own? Like, tell me some of the
Yeah.
transitions you
No,
went
that's
through
good.
with childcare and family as your career transitioned.
Yeah. So, we kept everybody in childcare. So, again, we've got, 4 kids at the time. I was, 1.5-ish to, 13, 12, 13-year old. And, they're obviously in like elementary and middle school and then 2 in basically, daycare. And we just remade because it was I didn't want to get them out of and also when I left the company it was during the summer, so we were yes they have daycare but then we're on vacation, we're like let's take a longer vacation because we can. now. Or I can go and take the smaller kids, put the two older in camps, and I can take and go visit family. So I, like I said, I got time back. I got memories. I got to do that. Then it was no, let's get in the same. Don't want the kids to get out of the rhythm of their own socialization and child development of and that structure. And I did. I just, I worked from home. I created kind of like a little office and worked from there. But it gave me the free. I could. It was close enough. I could walk up the street to go pick them up if I wanted to pick them up early. Um, but I just knew I needed to have that mental space of not the worry if somebody said, "Hey, can you meet me for lunch?" Because when, after, the July, August, we were taking like our vacation time, it was okay. I gotta get serious now. What am I doing? Which path am I going to take? Am I going to get more gigs? Am I going to go, get hired by another agency, or am I going to go work, for a brand? That was still and so I filled up my calendar of coffees, lunches, and afternoon cocktails every day straight for probably 6 weeks. Um, and I was just like a machine of
Exploring all three.
exploring and just whatever some it was creative directors, hey, can you meet with me? I got, I might have an opportunity. It was agency owners. It was, I'm in Greenville, I'm driving up to Charlotte, or I'm driving to Atlanta for interviews, of agency or corporate. So yeah, it was like, boom, boom, boom. What am I going to do? And during that time, it was like I would get maybe a gig. Like, hey, can you help me, with this? And oh, can you help me with that? And so I was picking up jobs here and there. Um, and it wasn't until probably that like Octoberish, November timeframe, I was like, I think there's a there because as I started meeting with other agency owners, what I recognized like that were what I would consider more smaller, where in my mind I'm like, can I build something to get where they are? They're 30 people today, or these guys are, it's 10 people, or I just felt like a big agency I would never be able to ever be several hundred. I was thinking, let me talk to the ones that have been in the market for 10 years, and they're 10, 20, 30 people. And the more I started talking with those folks, it was, you guys have no agency background. And you've built a business, like a successful business. And I've got a background that is so much more depth, so much more breadth, and of not just like, and listen to them, like they never understood how agencies operated, how to create systems, how to have processes, strategic methods, even like platforms and tools from a media perspective of, how do you start departments? How do you give the checks and balances? How do you, all of that? I lived in that for 2 decades. And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, this person's been in business for, 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. No agency, they came from a TV background. They were the in front of the camera broadcast, and they were like, well, I'm going to start it. Or they were a radio sales rep, or one person was a Chippendales dancer and just said, I was meeting all these agency business and clientele of these men who all bitched about their marketing. And he thought, well, I'll just start an agency for that. And that's one of them, he's since sold it, but it's like one of the most successful agencies in our region. But that's why I'm like, oh, so it was giving me confidence of, if they can do it, why shouldn't I be able to do it? And then when I was interviewing with like brand side, corporate side, ugh, that was like, I could never do that. One audience sitting in cubicle, structure, bureaucracy, no creatives, like no creative energy in these spaces because they outsource to agencies. And they're like, well, you would be managing. I'm like, it's like, I just don't even think I could be in this. Like, this is not my environment. I would suffocate here. And it doesn't have enough diversity for me. You realize agency, like agency pace is it's a whole different level. And you because you're juggling 10, 15, 30, 50 different, audience groups. You're solving problems of different magnitudes, and you're seeing patterns across different, size of businesses. You're seeing patterns of categories and industries that then can apply to other industries. So it's, my brain's wired that way, and I just thought I won't be fueled in this so quickly after about 8 weeks of interviewing that way. I'm like, corporate side is not me. I just need to, so I either need to just again continue with the gigs or go work for somebody else. And then it became the working for somebody else. God, I'm going to be making them a lot of, and then when you see their offers come in and you're going, I'm going, wait a minute. I know the math. I'm like running what I'm doing now and just these little gigs. This is not gonna, and you're not going to pay me the near amount of billings that I can bring. Yeah, no. Like then that's when you start running the numbers and the confidence gets there to be able to start it. Now I will say, then you hit the imposter syndrome of starting the business of where'd my confidence go? Well, that's a whole nother, yeah,
Because
journey.
that's another podcast,
That's a
right?
whole nother
Of
journey
stepping
right
into
there.
the leadership and then being
And
more than
you're
just a boss, being a
And you're
leader.
being accountable and responsible for everything. You take the heat. There is no brand you hide behind. You are
Yes.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
And then 4 years ago, you've got all this, you getting it figured out. You're moving from just, hiring some gig workers to bringing on employees. You're, thinking
Yep.
about a building, and then you start a whole nother separate
I know.
business.
I
And
know.
it's serving founders who
Yeah.
don't have much money. Not, some of them are getting an infusion of cash when they get
Right.
funding, but, I mean, to really help the founder community is helping all of them, which means, the ones that are struggling, bootstrapping,
Right.
and so what inspired you to want to do that when you already have all this on your plate? And so this is, how many years later, your kids are still around, right? Now they're probably in that
I
age
got,
where they're going to a million soccer practices and band
yeah.
rehearsals. And so you're managing this business and all these clients, and you've built this, this up to a good spot. And then you start something new. Yeah.
Right.
Why?
Right. Um, So it's a great question, and sometimes I might be insane, but so I say curiosity is my superpower, right? And I say curiosity is also a business's competitive advantage. It's our core belief that it is truly an advantage, but I'm fueled by that. So I started Orange Whip out of the this for helping people like me because it was a gap that I was seeing throughout my journey. And you have to realize, like Bright, our clients for several of our clients were chambers, economic development organizations, commerce, entities, and you know and then also I'm in the founder community ecosystem here in South Carolina. And it was such people were on just different areas of the spectrum. I felt there was like we get fueled by, I'm not alone, right? To know that, and to also not just okay, you're going through the same crap I am as a founder, because there's things where you can't. you don't want to say to your team, you don't want to share some of those fears and those vulnerabilities, or is this like, even, I became a coach of like incubators and accelerators. I've then started being a part of incubators and accelerators. I went through Goldman Sachs, 10,000 small business. I've done the Start Me. I've done the Enterprise Streetwise MBA. Um, and we're all like, can I ask this question? Is this a safe space for me to ask a question? And then you also then people ask questions or start revealing things, and then you also see people getting their ideas ripped off. Somebody that's better funded, or, oh, I like that idea. I'm going to go to market faster than you, and because I know you haven't, you're just a startup founder. You didn't protect yourself. Um, but I saw that pitch you did, and it's kind of in my same market. And all of a sudden, so then you get even more nervous of, oh crap, where is safe space? Um, or you see the advice being given again in these the universities, entrepreneur, you know, programs, these accelerators from these innovation centers. They're all run by people who have never started a business. These are paycheck people who've had a secure, because they're retirees from, big enterprise, Fortune 100 companies who have said, I have a lot to offer. Let me go help the startup community. And I'm going to start, I'm going to go be an investor. I'm going to go sit on a PE board. I'm going to be on a VC board. But they've never, so they're giving all this advice. So I would see founders and startup companies, in these communities across South Carolina. Um, this is like between 2014 and to 2020, doing all this, and they would come and go, like, who gave you that advice? And then like a year later, they've pivoted, and I'm like, who? Why wasn't another incubator? And they told me, no, go here. And so, God, that was like, you just put another $500,000 in that pivot. I'd like, who's giving? So so founders are getting pinged, or the stolen from, or just the fear of, can I ask questions because I'm not sure, if I don't want to sound stupid, um, or uh, just the lack of knowledge of, you know like, I know the marketing space and the operations, but I don't know, like, I didn't know accounting, finance, like that, IT, like that infrastructure, foreign. Other people come from, if they're a tech company, they understand like coding and development, but they have no idea about operations. And so everyone's coming at it from this, we're lacking in areas, but we're being advised by people with what I call a sustainer mindset. They've never had to bootstrap. They've never had to figure out scale up because they've all worked in companies where the systems were already in place. Um, and also there were the unwelcoming of certain rooms. So if you're, in a lot of ecosystems, if you're not tech, if you're not whatever the economic development entity that's gatekeeping that ecosystem, if you don't fit that profile um, as an impact entrepreneur for that market, you're not welcome. You don't feel welcomed in these networking opportunities, in these pitch rooms. I mean, literally, I've heard stories of women that walk in, or people of color, or somebody that's in an industry outside of, you know, like in South Carolina, it's advanced manufacturing, robotics, bioscience, tech. So if you're outside of that, I've had stories of people like walk up and go, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Can I meet you?" And they're like, "What do you do?" "Oh, I'm a service-based business for, and started my accounting firm or whatever." They've been like, "Oh, that's nice," and walked away from. right? So if you don't fit into that, or when I say the gatekeeping of, hey, we want to support you, we want to hear your story, we want to showcase you in our market as like we're going to promote you, we're going to help you get, and those are highly edited and um and filtered out. So it makes that region look better. So then it got my camera, I'm like, is this just this ecosystem? Is this how this works? So we started doing research of different ecosystems across the country, and it's like, we're not an anomaly. This happens a lot. Every ecosystem has its gatekeepers. It's filtered, how it's designed. And I was like, I don't want other people to feel like me. And I don't want other people to feel as lost as me, or to feel unwelcomed, or to feel like, they're just not alone. And how do we help? Because Bright's always been about how do we help people accelerate faster. Businesses, Orange Whip was designed of how do we tell stories? How do we provide tools and resources? How do we map these ecosystems so they can navigate the spaces without gatekeepers, and giving the confidence back to the founder to do that, um, so that they can accelerate faster. So two different business models. Bright's a service based, right? We are hired to perform brand work, marketing, ecosystem work, business coaching work, and advertising, running, media campaigns. But Orange Whip, it is if we build a community of founders and serve that community with them in mind, then the people that want to be in front of that community will will want their message to be. So it is it's a media company that support, like no different like an iHeart, or the American business journals of, we sell ads in sponsorships of our podcast. We sell ads and sponsorships of our newsletters and we co-create with field guides. And we have contributors that pay to have their articles, their leadership notes published on the platform and in the newsletters. So two different business models, but all serving with fueled by curiosity, and with the idea of both accelerate the companies. So yeah, if we can help some of the founders and they come over as Bright clients, fantastic. But when I go and try to do new business for Orange Whip, it's really to the economic developers. It's to maybe accounting firm that wants to sell their services to a founder, or an IP attorney that wants to get their message in front of small business owners that they're designed for those startups, or SEO service. Um, that's who we target the for the revenue.
And that's beautiful that you saw this need because you experienced the problem yourself and you said, even with all the things on my plate, I'm going to create something for this because there's a gap here.
Yeah.
So, with all the things that you've done, with your earlier career, with
Mm,
building the business, with this new platform, if you could go back to one time, an earlier version of you,
mm.
knowing then what you know now, what's one thing you would change?
I would have become more comfortable um, being more founder visible. Of We talk about the imposter syndrome of, I was in boardrooms, I was doing speaking engagements before I had this great confidence. And then when I started Bright, it's like that kind of, it deteriorated. I felt like I would be better behind the scenes. Because I am kind of I'm a nerd, when it comes to I'm figuring out the problem. That's all I'm doing, solving problems. I didn't realize the power of my voice, until probably way later than I should have. And it wasn't until I started Orange Whip that I found my voice. Like to be, really more public and not just presenting, a case study or let me tell you about this, this research, because that's what I would do speaking engagements for of, I did this big study and let me break this down of what this means. And I would go into like market trade shows or whatever. But again, I felt like I'm serving, I'm still a behind the scenes data nerd to find the voice of like, oh, I've lived through some shit. I've got advice. I see patterns, we're tracking patterns and we, there's a power in that. And then the power of building that network. I wish I would have started not just building it. I wish I would have done that earlier. But to reach out and build connections beyond just hey, we're connected on like, so that I didn't start until much like, because I'm a learned extrovert. I'm a natural introvert. So even like it takes me just to do a DM in LinkedIn. I still have to like psych myself into it. Or if I go to an event, I have to make a game, challenge for myself of, all right, I'm going to this event. I need to meet 5 new people. And this is going to be my talking points. This is going to be my questions I'm going to ask because I'm in this environment. This will be great. Like I have to have that. And then when I go home and I, it just completely drains me of, of, because it's not natural for me. But I see but when then it leads to a one-on-one conversation or, a friendship, I'm like, man, why didn't I do this? Why was why was I so afraid of this? And then watching how people, I'm fascinated with people who are very natural at it, that can just work a room and then trying to go, okay, I got to build that courage up because that's so to watch those connections happen in an accelerated manner. Just going, all right, that's something I can learn it. I can learn that. And that's what I've been practicing for the last 3 years. But
Nice.
it was, yeah, 3 years ago, it was, you got to do it.
Wow. And,
I wish I would have started that in 2013, 2014.
I hear that a lot that
Yeah.
people you wish they had taken the leap sooner. And we all learn. We all learn
Yep.
every day. And I know that our listeners are learning from the insights that you've shared today. And I thank you for that.
Oh,
And
you're welcome.
I thank you for watching and listening. If you were inspired by today's story, remember to share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe to meet our next amazing guest. If you or anyone you know is struggling to find the right childcare, just submit your criteria and then watch a video interview with the ideal nanny who fits your family at momsub.com. That's mom sub, like a substitute mom. Our mission is for you to get the help you need so you can discover what you want in life, pursue it with intensity, and fulfill your dream, reducing your stress,
Mhm.
guilt, and self criticism, and increasing your calm, confidence, and clarity along the way. Remember, your career, your choices, and your success are yours to define. So keep pushing boundaries and spreading your love and encouragement to other women who need it.